After prolonged negotiations, President Bola Tinubu has approved a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira for Nigerian workers and pledged to review the national minimum wage law every 3 years. This is coming after the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress met with the president at the presidential villa on Thursday. President Tinubu also promised to find ways to assist the private sector and the subnationals to pay the minimum wage. The labor union leaders say they accepted the proposal of 70,000 naira minimum wage from the president because of the incentives attached.
What they have announced in terms of the amount of 70,000 happen to be where we are now. But the good thing about it is that we will not wait for another 5 years to come and review. Rather than accepting on a figure that you wait for 5 years, it's like you have to now negotiate even 2 times within 5 years with a view to going up. That is one of the reasons, why we decided to reach where we are today.
We have been pushing that the issue of 5 years review is too much, that a lot of economic indices may have changed because we are in an era where things are moving very fast in terms of both macro and microeconomic policies. But with also the caveat that this is going to be done every 3 years. 3 years. The next review will be 3 years. And as I said as well, we made a case for both the SANO and SANO and NASU. We made a case for them that the president should, as a father of the nation, should look at it compassionately and do and so that we'll not have a case where universities will be closed again.
And to provide valuable insight on the issues raised so far, we have our guest analysts with extensive relevant experience and who are leading experts in their field. We're joined in the studio by Mahmud Jega, a Rise News analyst, and Baba Yusuf, a policy strategist and group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, you saw the short shot there about the new minimum wage. The news broke a couple of hours ago, and it ended up being 70,000 naira, far cry from where they started, over 500,000 naira. Let me start with you, Mr. Mahmud Jega. What are your reflections on that?
Well, the 70,000 agreed today is more than twice the 30,000 existing now. Although, given what has happened to the cost of living and the prices, is still a far cry from what Labour was demanding, most recently 250,000. But I think Labour has been quite realistic because already the state governments were saying, up to the last time they met, that they could not even afford to pay the 60,000 that was on the table. I'm sure some of them would be, but some of them could have problems. Then there are the local governments that we haven't had much from in this matter. Then there is the organized private sector, which, like all citizens, is suffering seriously from all the increased costs of nearly everything, fuel, electricity, and everything. So to insist that it must also pay. So maybe now that with God's help we have resolved this matter for now, my own thinking is that instead of waiting for another 3 years to start another protracted round of negotiations, maybe the country should adopt a different formula.
Well, they did say that every 3 years there has to be a review. That's the agreement now.
We could do what they do in some countries, like indexing wage increases to inflation. No, I'm not saying because there is a 34% inflation you increase. No, but there is a method of indexing that is used in some countries. For example, you might say if the inflation rate is 20% per annum, then possibly you increase the salary by 5% or something like that. It's a technical formula. I'm not
right. But Baba, that will depend on whether the economy is buoyant, whether it's thriving, whether the government is even able to pay.
Yeah, that's true. First of all, I'm very happy to hear this development today, Constance. It's a protracted issue that we have gotten to where we can say is a resolution of this issue so that we can move forward. The citizens of this country, of which the workers belong, I know is in a very tight situation. I also like the way the labor is able to give some level of understanding with regards to needs and wants, reality and imaginary. I know the figures they gave initially, I've said it in many fora.
Over 500,000
Yes,
naira.
you know, some of us said it, I even said it in my columns, that I believe this is a negotiation tactic to ensure that they draw the government out as much as possible. That being said, unfortunately, like we said also, government didn't hedge on time to conclude this negotiation, and now it turns out, as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the value for money, we are almost, the value of this 70,000 almost the same as the 30,000 or more or less. But importantly, also going forward, is the ability of the states to pay, Constance. We know at the last increment in 2019 to date, we have states that are still owing. So we want to see how they clear the backlog and how they are able to pay consistently, regularly, on time, moving forward. I also heard some, I think it's a political speak by Mr. President to say he will try to support the subnationals and the private sector. I heard Mr. President to stop saying he's supporting those subnationals. These people are responsible, as far as I'm concerned, to 65% of the issues we found ourselves in. You cannot be feeding governors with certain bottle up till today. What happens to value innovation? What happens to value creation? They should be able to find ways and means to take care of the people that work for them going forward. But that being said, we'll wait and see how the governors will respond, you know, in action.
Yes, because
going forward,
the governors have to respond. Organized private sector also has to respond because they are involved in this. I'm not aware that they said they're able to pay 70,000, but this was a breaking news, so we'll see more from that tomorrow. Okay, let me come to you, Mr. Mahmud Jega. Why do you think that Labour accepted this 70,000? And also, the president has already sent a bill to the National Assembly to increase the budget, 2024 budget, by 6.2 trillion naira because they have to accommodate this new development. How do you think that will impact the economy?
Well, I didn't see the details of what the government intends to do with the 6-point-something trillion. And you know, the announcement came yesterday ahead of accepting the 70,000 naira minimum wage, but quite possibly the increase is factored in.
Yes, that's exactly, but, yes.
As my colleague said, that is the federal government. You see, the federal government has more wiggling room than state and local governments, not to mention private sector. Because if anything, the federal government controls central bank, they can do ways and means and take money like we had at the former administration to 20-something trillion. Now, states cannot do that. Local governments cannot do that, not to mention the private sector. So this 6 trillion naira increase over the budget, the states, I don't really know what they will do. You know, the last time when their chairman, Professor Soludo, is the leader of the governors in the negotiating team, and he made a powerful case about how states will not be able to pay the 60,000 minimum wage offer on the table that time, not to talk of the 70,000, because very seriously, even the 30,000 that was promulgated into law in 2019, some states are not paying. There was a state government that announced last month that it will start paying the 30,000 minimum wage last month. And then this month you say that the thing has gone up to 70,000, which is more than twice. So we really have to hear from the state governments. And if the push comes to the shove, maybe we will have to, the National Assembly may have to promulgate a federal minimum law, not a national minimum law. Maybe promulgate a minimum wage law for the federal government and possibly another arrangement for the states and the private sector if the push comes to the shove. Because even now, we are celebrating that, okay, we have avoided another costly strike and disruption. Yes. Fine, but we still have to hear from the other tiers of government and the private sector.
It's been a tough, long journey for Labour. It started with initial strike, shutdown of the economy, and then there were allegations of intimidation by the federal government to make sure that they drop all the negotiations, and to cow them. Here we are, they've accepted 70,000 naira. Was it worth the trouble? Especially for workers, was it really worth it, Baba?
Yeah, it's a process, Constance, that has to happen. And I believe it is worth the trouble because we all know that if the Labour did not go the way they did, just like, we know the antecedents of government, that 30,000 naira conversation will still be what is on the table. So I will say it is worth the while. The Labour Union representing the workers, had their say, and they are able to influence government to budge in to come to the level of the 70,000. I totally agree that maybe further down the line, there may be some kind of rebalancing to see because of the purchasing power and affordability. But then that, I think, has to go hand in hand with the restructuring of this country. And that is when we will now maybe see a state paying less than the other state. Right. But with all due respect to all, I believe the states have no excuse to say they are not being able to pay the 70,000. In all honesty, they need to look at how they cost wastages, create wealth, and be able to deliver, going forward. But what is important now is all hands and their citizens are more aware of their rights, and they make demands of government more than ever before in the history of this country. So I don't believe people will sit down again and continue allowing things to go forward. And for the states also, they need to deal with this. We know that the governor of Edo State had already agreed to 70,000. We know that there was an arrangement or agreement, in principle between Professor Chukwuma Soludo and the Labour Union at the state level, and one other states that are also engaging at that level. I expect other governors to do that in their own interest, because they also need this labor force at state level to be productive, so that when they deal with this issue of availability of minimum wage, they can now tax the workers from the point of view of efficiency and productivity, which is another issue. We will now have the power, some of us, to speak to the Nigerian civil servants with regards to productivity and efficiency. But this, in fairness, has to be dealt with, and they must find ways and means to deal with it.
That's a good point on productivity. Let's go to the PDP. They had the meeting yesterday, and they raised a lot of points. Mr. Jega, I would like to come to you.
Yeah.
What are your general reflections about some of the things they talked about? So, for instance, on the economy and local government autonomy.
Mr. Olobondian, who was here earlier, he made a very persuasive case. It was a very good meeting they had, because for the first time, PDP, as the main opposition party, showed some level of cohesion among its leaders and members, which the country's democracy needs seriously. The position that what they said about the economy, I think generally agreed. Nobody is arguing that things are okay as they are now, and you expect an opposition party to voice it out. If anything, in fact, like Mr. Olobondian said, they said it in a gentle manner, because these are governors. If it is like the party publicity secretary that is speaking, he will take no prisoners. But if you are a state governor, you have some responsibility for the things that are happening. So I'm not surprised. About local governments, even the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, that's the governor of Kwara State, he welcomed the Supreme Court decision as soon as it was made. And the PDP governors today also said the same thing. But they added this caveat. I can't remember the words they used, but they said something about it should be implemented maybe in such a way not to harm the Constitution or something like that. They used some hidden phrase.
So the point is that the Constitution has to be reviewed to accommodate this autonomy of local governments. That's what they're saying. I mean, some legal experts have also told that line.
Yeah, well, you see, as also many people have written, while this is a step forward, the Supreme Court decision that funds should be paid directly to local governments and also that they must be run by democratically elected chairmen and councillors. That is a good start on paper, but you see in practice, in every state in Nigeria, the governors determine who would be chairman of local government and councillor. And the state electoral commissions all over the country have lost credibility because in any state where a local government election is held, the party in power in that state will win everything, which is why some people are saying INEC should take over. And I saw somebody saying a bill has been introduced in the National Assembly to create a local government electoral commission, national one. That one would be crazy.
Well, Baba, INEC taking over the elections, would that make any difference? I mean,
I wrote in my weekly column about this, welcoming on the nation newspapers that yes, this that has happened, like Mr. Jega said, is a welcome development. Payment directly, the autonomy, the financial autonomy, very key. And the fact that there must be democratically elected chairmen in those councils. However, I have a concern with regards to operationalizing this, and also draw our attention to say, hey, Nigeria, the way we do things, at the end of the day, how will that impact on the common man? So back to your question with regards to INEC driving election at state level, I completely and strongly, of the strong opinion that we shouldn't encourage that. Build up to 2027 from a strategic perspective. There is a possibility that which we are trying to remove from the governors will end up at the federal, and that will make it more dangerous. Without that restructuring I'm talking about, Constance, because it presupposes that, as the saying goes, he who pays the piper dictates the throne. The presidency or the president or the federal government will now have the powers of the 774 local governments. Yes, in the short term, because the elections process, is driven by the governors. But if you now remove those powers from the governors and just take it to INEC, whereas INEC is the biggest culprit of the abuse of our electoral processes, then you have a problem, because some of us are even saying we should deconstruct INEC to have operations, regulation, and whatever. So what I will expect is to have a legislative process that will ensure that we have some semblance of sanity with regard to the state electoral bodies, so that we don't also completely abuse the principles of separation of power. We cannot completely handcuff the governors hand and leg in our quest to de-emphasize their power and end up emboldening and empowering absolute power that is already absolute at the federal level. So there must be creativity with regards to legislation in this particular regard to achieve that objective, because build up to 2027, in the next 1 year or so, you can see what is happening already in Rivers State.
Right.
As a case study of potentially what will happen if we rush this process. We should take it one step at a time.
Let's even extend that conversation. So the PDP says that 2027, I mean, it's a bit early to discuss that, but they have said that 2027, they're ready to take over. Mr. Jega, what do you have to say concerning that? Okay. A party that is struggling to put its house in order.
Exactly. When a closet APC member is controlling the PDP National Working Committee, well, that's okay. As a statement of hope and aspiration. In any case, politics is so difficult that unless you give yourself hope that you are going to win, even your supporters, Constance, any day you enter politics, don't ever express pessimism.
Are you dragging me into politics?
Because once your supporters feel that you are saying, how can we win in 2027? Right. By tomorrow, you'll not see anybody. You'll not see anybody.
So they lie.
No, not really. They have to be optimistic.
Right.
That's how it works in Nigerian politics, at least. You have to assure yourself, even if you know it's not true.
So they're backing Fubara fully now. Do you think that was talk?
It's political speed, but I would like to contribute to what Mr. Jega said with regards to 2027. What are the potentials? Look, the bottom line is the PDP need to move from playing. They are playing now. they should know more than any other person that taking power from the incumbent in our kind of climb is not easy. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, former President Muhammadu Buhari and co., we know how many years it took them and how they were able to come back and take power from the ruling party. And we also know that PDP is also partly responsible for the socio-economic woes we have found ourselves. Indeed, in the last 6 to 7 years, they have not
PDP or APC?
PDP.
How do you mean?
Have been part of the political woes of this country. Where we are today, Constance, is not just a snap of a finger that in the last 3 or 4 or 8 years, let's not kid ourselves, it's a build-up of maladministration, of successive administrations, and other people coming to add to the woes of what was there before. We know the indices and they have been retrogressing over the years. So I don't think political speak will give PDP power back. And we have that issue of Nyesom Wiki that is an issue they need to deal with quickly for them to even start having a trajectory towards that. You know, but the Fubara conversation is just political speak. What we have seen so far is a federal government that is showing some inherent or tacit support, you know, for what is going on in Rivers. And they have not, the PDP governors or the PDP as a party has not shown any support for Fubara. Indeed, I don't know how they will show the support when the entire PDP structure at the state level is controlled by Minister Nyesom Wiki. No governor from another state can come and control that structure. And we know politics is local. So it's political talk.
Well, in a few minutes or in a few seconds, we're you know, almost out of time. In a few seconds, what advice would you give the PDP? I mean, it's supposed to be the main opposition party. It's well established, but it's very disappointing to a lot of people.
They should put get their acts together if they want to have a serious chance at regaining power in 2027. And it's a lot of effort.
They have a chance. I mean, Edo elections are upcoming. So they have
Ondo too.
Ondo too, yes.
Yes.
Most likely, yes, that would play out. But if PDP does not put its house or her house in order, what potentially may happen is the ongoing conversations with regard to alliances, if anything will happen, and PDP will now slowly but surely become a political relic and potentially have another group that will try to copy the template of the APC emergence and try to give APC a good run for their money, because within the APC too, let's not forget they have internal wranglings. So maybe there will be a morphing of a group of people. That being said, unless there is serious movement, I don't see any formidable opposition to the ruling party.
Baba Yusuf, Mahmud, Jega, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Primetime. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching.